The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff or management of Worldwide Digital Broadcasting Corporation. Not necessarily those of the staff or management of Worldwide Digital Broadcasting Corporation.
Knowledge is power, and this is powerful stuff. Wellness Education Cannabis Advocates of Nevada present the We Can 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour with the We Can radio team. For the next 60 minutes, we'll take an in-depth look at the cannabis reform revolution sweeping the nation. Now, let's fire up the news hour. Here is the We Can radio team.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Weekend 702 Cannabis News Hour. I'm your host, Mike McAuliffe, in the studio with all the latest news. And, of course, joining me as usual is my co-host and friend, Perry Heitschuh. How you doing today, Perry?
Very, very well. Thank you so much for having me once again, Mike.
We're doing well, but at the same time, we can be mad as hell about what's going on in this movement. I mean,
we can take it however we choose to, I suppose.
We can. So let's get into some Nevada news first, and let's see what's going on here. We have from the Las Vegas Sun by Chris Kudalis, the Early Start program for recreational marijuana sales okayed, and hopefully this has been out for about a week and a half now, this news, and hopefully you will be aware by now that beginning July 1st, we are looking to have adult use, responsible adult use, which I prefer that term to recreational use, for cannabis in Nevada, and we are currently in the application period for dispensaries to
that window just opened, did it not?
Just opened, and we will be having county commission hearings next month because these will be privileged licenses, and so we're going to see who talks a good game up in front of the county. So according to this article, the Early Start licenses will expire on January 1st, 2018, and the temporary program was established to allow the department to identify and solve problems with recreational weed before issuing more state certifications in 2018, said Dion Contine, Executive Director of the Department of Taxation. The Department of Taxation spokeswoman Stephanie Klapstein said the regulations, which have been in the works since earlier this year, were designed to balance the state's desire for tax revenue with the marijuana industry's push to expand into the retail market. Balance the desire between the state's desire for tax revenue and the marijuana industry's push to expand. There's no balance there. They're both pushing in the same direction. The state wants the money, and
at least they're
MMEs want to get open.
At least they're admitting what's going on. I mean, there's no hiding at this point. They know they're trying to get revenue out of it. They know they're trying to expand. Hopefully they can just come together and work for some reasonable regulations to get this industry moving forward as quickly as possible without taxing it to death before it gets off the ground.
I don't think so. I don't think some of those people are worried about taxing it.
No,
not at all.
No, not at all.
Actually, I think they would be happy to see it die in the crib.
Well,
but, it's just not going to happen. So
no, of course not. No, I could go in a couple other directions with our local legislators and how they seem to constantly raise fees and taxes on us, and this is just another example of that. But this really isn't with that, so let's move on.
Yeah. Well, according to Commissioner Contine, she said that our goal is to get the people that are ready and in good standing going, regulate them, and make sure we're doing the right thing. She said during a hearing on Wednesday in Carson City, a legislative hearing, she said, we plan to do so prudently to go forward and figure out where we are once we get through this first wave of applications. And, it's interesting. They're using the term good standing, and so what does that mean according to the state? Well, it includes dispensaries, cultivations, and production facilities. They earn good standing by going more than 6 months without a suspension of their state-issued licenses under the Nevada Division of Public and Behavioral Health, which is the current regulatory body for this.
Isn't that just about everybody, though?
And it says nearly all of
Okay.
that is 190 current medical marijuana license holders meet that requirement. So we have gone from a point when these places were first going up for the licenses and first going to open, we've gone from a zero tolerance point expressed by the state and the county that if you do anything wrong, if we find anything wrong with your operation or you're diverting or you're shorting or you're this or that or whatever, you're not going to get another license because this is a privileged license, and if you don't demonstrate why you should have a license, we're not going to give it to you. So now that has changed to, well, if you haven't gotten in trouble in the past 6 months, you're in good standing and you're good to sell weed. That would be fine if that were out there in the larger community, but to just be changing the rules mid-game here is something we're really good at here.
I would say, well, that's par for the course at this point, so,
It very much is. So we're going to have this early start. The problem that I have with this is that the laws are, the bills are moving in the direction of statute that are once again going to be a boon to the current MME license holders.
Oh,
the
of course.
Who are already in this have been granted a monopoly by the initiative last November.
We once again have the government picking our winners and losers. It is what it is. People talk about how do I put this? How we need to let free market capitalism play out, but we've really never really had that, at least since I've been alive, or that I've seen in this industry at least. And it's just kind of one of those unfortunate things. We can't really stop that because the law is what it is. It's very disappointing to see all of the power go to these very few licensees. Yeah. Unfortunately, the timetable is not very good for teams that were left out that want to get in. I think the window is another 18 months after the recreational licenses are issued.
But you see, that is for someone who is going to be. That was an MME, which was then converting to a retail establishment. But what we have happening here is a whole new class of businesses, which are these cannabis consumption lounges, whatever you're going to want to call them. But they're retail sites.
Yeah, but they're all getting funneled into the pre-existing license holders.
Exactly that. And the reason that they're doing that is because it seems to not make a lot of economic sense to have a cannabis lounge where you can't actually purchase the cannabis. You have to bring your own. And so as to divert from that, they're giving these current MME holders the ability to go in there and get first crack at these. It's not what the initiative intended, and unfortunately it's not what some of our legislators have said over the past year or so, the direction that we would be going.
Well, it seems like that's always nonsense. They lead you down the merry path until the 11th hour and then yank the rug out from under you. I remember when the first bill was passed in 2013 when they said, well, how are these dispensaries going to get their medicine? And the original idea was that patients were going to be able to individually sell their medicine to these dispensaries, and we were promised that for over a year. That was a quote-unquote promise that was made, but it never really made it into the language. And it did, but then there was this other language that said that they had to test every X amount per batch, and that would have made it, considering you can only have 2.5 ounces per patient, that would have made the testing outrageously expensive, so that all went down the drain.
That really
and
was
it just
the
seems
point, though, as to why it went down.
Well, sure, but that was done, in my opinion, maliciously to do that. And it just seems like every time there's something that could benefit normal people, they yank that away. And I point to an article I read. I can't remember the name of the article, but when I was living in California a few years ago, I read this op-ed in one of the local newspapers in Southern California, and basically it said that there's no philanthropy left in the cannabis movement, whereas in the previous recreational California ballot initiatives, all of the money that was coming in was from wealthy independent philanthropists who wanted to see this passed for what they perceived as the right reasons, or at least the editor perceived it as the right reasons. All of the language that was contained in was very philanthropic in nature. There was nothing restrictive or prohibitive about it concerning business licensing or anything about that. Whereas today, everything has to have a caveat to it because everyone's got something that they want involved in it. There's no philanthropy left in it. It's all big business. And you see that coming down the pipeline. I've talked about this before, but as we go further and further into this way of thinking, you're going to see the philanthropy become less and less important. And people are just going to, care. As it becomes more capitalistic, the original intent of the medical marijuana movement gets forgotten, becomes forgotten.
If you recall, when the MMEs were first being licensed and when Senate Bill 374 was being worked on in 2013, there was a requirement for any MME licensee to promise and deliver community benefits in their application. That counted for 10% of the score that determined who was going to get these licenses or not. But in the intervening time now, that community benefits portion of the license application seems to have just disappeared, and so now it's not about this is something where you're going to make a lot of money, so what are you going to do for the community to help it so that you get to make all this money. Now it's just, oh well, you're going to make a lot of money and pay some taxes.
Which is fine if that would have been the original structure.
But it was not the original structure. And it's much the same way with these recreational consumer lounges.
It's just so disappointing that people don't follow through on their promises. You know, my grandfather told me once that there is no right and wrong in business, just winners and losers.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing today, is there is no right and wrong in these people's mindset. Oh, I promised you this. Well, you know, to hell with you. What are you going to do about it, basically? What are you going to do about it? You know, there's no ethics, morals, or decency, really, within a lot of these entities, unfortunately. And it is what it is. You know, success is success. I'm not going to hate on anyone for becoming successful. No. I just wish that people would keep their promises is all, and, you know, say what you mean and mean what you say.
When you have public servants, when you've had people elected to office who start promising in one direction, and the whole idea for these lounges was to allow middle-class people, entrepreneurs, people who, you know, did not have the deep pockets or connections to get those original MME licenses.
That's the idea.
This was like a consolation prize.
But they never really intended for middle-class people to get involved in this. And that's the end of the story right there. Because if they would have wanted this, they would have gotten it done.
Very true.
I mean, you know, we can go ahead and theorize and say, oh, you know, this happened or that happened. But in reality, they're just giving you the runaround and, you know, playing us for the fools that we all are.
So with that, we have from the RJ another article just came out a couple of days ago. Nevada marijuana sales permit application period begins, and you just mentioned this, Perry. And this is by Colton Lockheed from the RJ. And he says the Department of Taxation began accepting applications this past Monday for businesses wanting to grow, produce, and sell recreational marijuana. Now, these licenses will, of course, allow medical marijuana dispensaries to sell cannabis products beginning on July 1st, and the application deadline ends May 31st. And the public hearings
a couple of weeks here, okay, yeah.
Month. The voter-approved ballot initiative tasked the state with creating a regulated sales structure by the start of 2018, but after visiting and studying other states that had legalized marijuana, Nevada officials determined that waiting a full year after the drug became legal would risk growing the black market. I gotta call bullshit on that. The black market is already there and well established. It's not. I do not believe now. You know, we have legalization, and all of a sudden, half the population that didn't smoke says, "Oh well, I'm not going to go to jail now, so let's start."
I think you'll see a few people try it, but you know. I don't think you're going to see. Well, it's hard to say because we've never messed with this before, and Vegas is such a different market than anywhere else because of the, you know, what happens here stays here idea, and people really, we encourage people to kind of let their inhibitions go when they come here and to do their thing. But still, even with all of that, it's hard for me to imagine that these people are just going to abandon their entire life worldview and just switch over and do this, you know, all of a sudden.
It would be a lot healthier for them if they did. But no, I agree. They're not,
and people aren't stupid. You know, people have jobs that they're worried about. They're aware of the drug testing issue and things like that. So, I mean, maybe there's a hint of truth, but I don't like their overbearing nature on that statement, you know.
Well, and they have been. And anything to do with anything regarding personal privacy, whether it's what you put into your body or what you do in your bedroom, the government seems to want to get in there with cameras and just have a say on everything that you're doing, certainly. So these businesses, only current currently licensed and operating medical marijuana establishments will be eligible to apply for the retail production cultivation licenses. And these licenses are also going to be available to liquor wholesalers per language in IP2, medical marijuana companies and operating medical marijuana distribution companies. And that's more on the wholesale side of it.
I have a strange question for you.
Yeah,
maybe you can answer. So let's take a dispensary, just any random dispensary. Are they going to be able to sell medical and recreational out of the same door? Are they just going to have a different tax? Like, how does that work? Are they going to have two different cash registers, one for medical, one for recreational, that have different taxes built in? Or
these days, with computer control of all these things, you don't need to use separate registers. And what the state is moving towards in several bills this session will be to say that rather than having to maintain separate crops and essentially separate points of sale for medical cannabis and adult use cannabis, what they're going to do is be able to combine them and just be able to put in a different code at the point of sale. So this plant that we have right here and we harvest, you're going to get an ounce for our medical condition, and I'm going to get an ounce for recreational condition, all the way the same,
except
right
the price.
up to the point where it comes to the cash register, and you're a medical patient, so you don't pay the extra tax. And
so they'll have the same testing, the same testing requirements and all that kind of stuff.
But this will be more cost effective for the establishments, because rather than having to conduct separate tests of the same medicine or the same product, let's call it, for patients and for adult use, they're just going to be able to do that all in one shot, package it up all the same way, and then at point of sale, that's where
that actually makes a lot of sense.
Well, it happens sometimes,
Well, speaking of making sense and not making sense, I saw an article that broke a couple hours ago out of the RJ that was talking about the pot lounge bill.
I've got it on the screen right here. And it came up at 11:25 a.m. and it's also by Colton Lockhead. And it says that Nevada's pot lounge legislation is closer to becoming a reality Tuesday, but Governor Brian Sandoval appears wary of signing the bill should it hit his desk. And we're talking about Senate Bill 236, and it passed out of the Assembly government operations on Tuesday. And this is a Senate bill, so it's already cleared the Nevada Senate, and now it's going through the Assembly. And now it's passed out of government operations, so it looks to me like the next stop for it will be the full Assembly, and it does look like it's going to pass. So if it does get approved, it goes to Sandoval, but he might be hesitant, according to the article, to give a bit of approval. And his spokeswoman, Mary St. Martin, said the governor has called for Nevada's recreational marijuana industry to be restricted, responsible, and ultimately respected. Wow, the governor wants to give the marijuana industry respect. Finally, it's decades overdue, but glad to see it here. And she continues that he's doubtful whether pot lounges would achieve these stated goals, but will review the legislation.
I love the dismissive language. Pot lounges.
Yeah, really. There are so many small ways to shade what you're saying. And let's see. A similar measure moved through the Colorado legislature this year, but was stopped cold after Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper threatened to veto it. So they were moving through, and he said, no, and they've stopped theirs. Now, what we have here, though, is the governor is saying that he may not want to sign it here. That doesn't mean he's going to veto it. Under our constitutional system, once a bill passes through its respective houses of legislature and is passed to the executive branch, whether that be a governor or a president, that sitting executive has 10 days to decide what to do. He can sign it and give it his stamp of approval, and it passes into law. He can veto it and say, nope, send it back and try to override the veto, otherwise the bill is dead. But the third option is he can just let it sit there and not do anything with it. And after 10 days, it becomes law.
Okay.
And so as long as he's not threatening to veto it, I think that he's maintaining his conservative credentials that I have concerns about this and we want to do this the right way and we don't want the wrong people.
Rumor keeps running around that he's gunning for a Supreme Court position or some kind of stuff.
He just took himself out of the running for FBI director. That came through in the past several days that the administration was considering him. But I think he'd prefer the Supreme Court. They also Senator
you can't get fired from that.
Also said that Merrick Garland, whose Supreme Court seat was stolen and given to Neil Gorsuch, that Merrick Garland should be the new FBI director. And Garland responded a day later and said, no. I enjoy being a judge. I want to be a judge. And, let him continue to do so. And, on this story about the governor, we have a comment from Tick Segerblom here telling the RJ that these clubs could be integral in fulfilling the governor's budget, which included nearly $70 million in taxes from marijuana sales. And Tick said that this is really for the resort industry and tourism. If the governor is going to try to raise $70 million in taxes from tourists, arguably they need a place to use it. And
sure, of course. I see online on the Facebook thread, and they're like, "Oh, well, just smoke it in your hotel room." It's like, are you people not understanding? Like, this is exactly what we're trying to avoid. There has to be compromise between the consumers and the resorts. The resorts don't want it in their goddamn hotel rooms, and the people who are the consumers don't want to pay the $300 fee, or they don't want to get harassed standing outside. Something's got to give.
There has been a stigma about cannabis use for decades in this country, right? Up until the early part of the 20th century, it was well accepted and medicinal in view, but there has been this stigma that has come up, and so we see it even today, because now we've passed legal cannabis in Nevada and multiple other states, and yet here we are after it's passed. They're saying, okay, well, we're not going to arrest you and we're not going to screw up your life and give you a record and make it so you can't get housing or scholarships or loans or anything like that, or a job, but instead we're going to let you do it, but you have to hide in your home. You have to be like a little mouse hiding in his little cubby hole.
And don't you dare drive.
But don't drive. Don't go out in public. Don't let us see you eating that cheese, or you're gonna be in trouble. And it just shows that as much as the people are moving forward on this, government is
it's just propaganda. Propaganda is so effective. People are like, I hear a lot of pious people are like, dope is evil and this and that. It's like, God didn't tell you to hate cannabis.
Genesis 1:29.
Well, government told you to hate that.
Yes.
The same people who were supposedly, infringing on your religious rights and like which one is it? You know what I mean? You can't have it both ways. And it's the same thing for so many other little classifications of people that have just been brainwashed into thinking that cannabis is just this evil thing. I talk to veterans, Vietnam veterans especially, who hate cannabis consumers because they liken them to the hippies who would spit on them when they came home from
even though half their compatriots were smoking it over there.
Oh, sure, but in their mind, those are the people who were the bad ones who were spitting on me, and all you dopers are the fucking same, and we hate all of you, and I'll hate you forever. And it's just like one of those things, you'll never break down those walls. Well, and it's just. We got to just work on continuing to educate the upcoming generations
in time, because we have another story here that showed some numbers, and I'll tell you what, I'll find them. We'll get back to them just as soon as we take a quick break.
My name is Janine Evans, and I am the office manager at Getting Legal, and we help people get their medical marijuana cards. Anyone can be approved for a medical marijuana card as long as they have a pre-existing medical condition. The medical conditions recognized in Nevada include severe pain, severe nausea, muscle spasms, seizures, glaucoma, cancer, HIV or AIDS, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Our staff helps every patient determine before they come in for a visit whether or not they will qualify. We take care of the whole process of getting a medical marijuana card from the state of Nevada from start to finish. Our services include paperwork processing, a physician's visit, notary services. All of our patients pick up their approval letters right here in our office. We make it fast, simple, and easy. During your consultation, we will discuss different products available at the dispensaries, such as edibles, lotions, and concentrates. We will also discuss different ways to medicate, such as smoking or vaporizing. You will receive a separate identification card identifying you as a medical marijuana patient. This is used to enter the dispensaries and only to enter the dispensaries. Every veteran receives a discount off of the full price of their card. We also offer discounts to anyone working within the medical marijuana industry. All you need to do is call 702-979-9999 and a member of our friendly staff will help you schedule an appointment.
And we're back with more news here. Okay, let's turn to a federal viewpoint right now, because that really has everybody clutching their underwear in the marijuana business right now. They're really not sure about what's going on. And we've spoken on this program about Jeff Sessions' view on cannabis and the Trump administration's general law and order policies. And so we have something new from Washington Post here by John Wagner and Matt Zaprosky, and it's entitled "Jeff Sessions' War on Drugs Has Medical Marijuana Advocates Worried." And apparently in a signing statement that accompanied President Trump's signature on a bill that passed this month that keeps the government open, the president noted a handful of objections on legal grounds, and one was a provision that prohibits his administration from interfering with state-run medical marijuana programs. And basically the signing statement is a practice that began with George W. Bush and continued under the Obama administration, in which the president, as they're signing a bill, if they have objections to certain things in the bill, they'll make little notes on it, and it is not actually changing the law as much as defending a policy position of the administration.
Well, basically, that's just giving an opinion. As far as I'm aware, that's reminiscent of a line item veto. He doesn't have the authority of a line item veto, as far as I'm aware.
Right.
So what's the point?
Right, because they use it because there is still a fair amount of executive power, and they'll use these to push policy decisions in other directions. And so the particular provision here that prohibits his administration from interfering with state-run medical marijuana programs is the Hinchy-Rohrbacher Amendment, which has gotten added to the congressional budget every year since 2014, which effectively has stopped the DEA's war on medical marijuana in those states which have legalized it. Now, Sessions last week directed that federal prosecutors would get significantly tougher on drug defendants than they had been under the Obama administration.
Fantastic.
And a task force handled by Sessions is looking at changes in enforcement, particularly regarding marijuana, a drug that remains illegal at the federal level despite significant movement in numerous states in recent years to loosen restrictions. And so the Ogden memo, which came out in 2009, and then later the Cole memo, crafted guidelines for where the government was going to get involved in cannabis prosecution and where they'd stay away from it. And the Cole memo issued essentially 8 areas, like no diversion into the criminal market, no selling to kids.
It was a really basic, common sense kind of list, to tell you the truth.
And so what's happened now is that the president has said he's objected to that provision, and that it prevents him from carrying out his responsibility to maintain full law and order. And a Sessions spokesman has said that that his note on that signing a statement essentially revoked the Cole memo, and so it is no longer in effect. And whether that's going to happen or not is going to be interesting to see. Now, just before the break, I mentioned we had some numbers. This article brings up a Quinnipiac poll last month, and Quinnipiac is a university back in the East Coast, and they've been doing public polling on numerous issues for many, many years, and they're well respected. And their poll last month found that 94% of Americans, including 90% of Republicans, support allowing adults to legally use marijuana for medical purposes if their doctors prescribe it. 94%. You know, you were mentioning before the break those few guys who are, you know, looking at pot smokers and say, oh, you know, you're the hippies that spit on me. You'll have a few diehards hold out, but 94%. That's even a bigger percentage than the 91% that finds Congress to be.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's a bigger. Yeah, exactly.
So that's a huge number. And you know, Jeff Sessions, however, our Attorney General, said in an appearance in Richmond, Virginia in March that medical marijuana has been hyped, maybe too much. And a Justice Department spokesman said that the DOJ must be in a position to use all laws available to combat the transnational drug organizations and dangerous drug traffickers who threaten American lives, said spokesman Ian Pryor, and who wouldn't discuss the issue further. That was his statement, and then he ran away. He didn't want to talk about it. You know,
people are a bunch of phoney Republicans, the whole lot of them.
My God.
You know, individual liberty, my ass.
And so, you know, the Hinchy-Rohrbacher amendment that I mentioned, Dana Rohrabacher is a conservative Republican congressman from California, and but he uses medical cannabis, a sitting congressman, because of injuries he received years ago when he was younger as a surfer, and so medical cannabis is working for him, and he, of good faith, wants to have it be available to help anyone else. So President Trump wrote in the signing statement, "I will treat this provision consistently with my constitutional responsibility to take care of the laws to be faithfully executed." I'm going to have to work on my Trump impression. I haven't done one. I keep hoping he's going to get impeached before I can learn it. We'll see what happens.
Don't hold your breath.
Yeah, Tom Angel, the founder of the Marijuana Majority, said that these comments don't necessarily mean a crackdown, but essentially the president is saying he reserves the right to ignore this congressionally approved position.
I almost wonder whether if he wouldn't have been elected and never got into politics, whether he would have ventured into cannabis himself, because he's such a, like, he'll put money into anything he thinks there's money into. I mean, he's got Trump suits and beds and, you know,
if only we had gotten to him first.
And a few years ago, I saw Trump vodka in a liquor store that did not do so well and failed. Absolutely. I've seen Trump wine. Apparently, he doesn't drink alcohol, but has no problem with feeding poison to people at a great rate, just as long as you're not stoned.
Right.
You know, that's okay. But it's almost like I almost wonder whether, you know, some of his people might have taken a look at it beforehand and shoved it aside just because.
Yeah, absolutely. Now the response to Jeff Sessions rescinding the Obama administration guidance, the response came fast and furious from a diverse set of people across the country. U.S. Senator Rand Paul, a Republican, a libertarian conservative from Kentucky, said that mandatory minimum sentences have unfairly and disproportionately incarcerated too many minorities for too long. Attorney General Sessions' new policy will accentuate that injustice. On the other side of the aisle, Senator Patrick Leahy, a Democrat of Vermont and chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, said that the Attorney General's new sentencing policy is an ideologically motivated attempt to resurrect the failed policies of the war on drugs. Make no mistake, low-level offenders will spend years and even decades more in prison. This will not make us safer. Quite the opposite. It will strip critical public safety resources away from targeting truly violent criminals in order to house non-violent drug offenders. And it's because not only did the Attorney General rescind that memo, but he also instructed his assistant U.S. attorneys, because after they fired all those attorneys at the beginning of the administration, they haven't replaced them yet. But so he's saying that what they should do is look at marijuana crimes or any drug crimes and look to charge the most serious level that they think they can possibly prove. Under the Cole guidance, they were not charging with specific amounts as a way to avoid triggering mandatory minimum sentences, which are draconian across the country. And so by not using that specific amount, they could more effectively work plea deals out and have people who are non-violent, non-kingpins spend much less time in prison than they otherwise would have. But now the Attorney General is saying, no, let's ramp up those prosecutions and let's really throw these people in jail. And
well, there was a rumor going around online that Attorney General Jefferson Beauregard, Sessions, is heavily invested in private prisons in his personal portfolio, and is one of the reasons why he's so adamant bringing back these policies is because it directly affects his ability to make money.
It has been the most nakedly biased administration towards their own finances.
Yeah, well, at least the other ones hit. Yeah, at least the other ones hit it a little better. You know, I don't know. Like Obama's worth like what, $20 million. I don't know how the hell. I don't know how the hell you get that rich being a public servant. You know, he's never held a real job in his life except being a public servant. It's hard for me to believe that being the president and being a state senator would get you that kind of opulent wealth while serving in office.
Books, and he's gotten several $1 million a book. You know,
sure, yeah,
make money.
Sure,
you know,
I'm sure he's a great author.
Stephen King is probably worth a bunch of money too. You know,
I'm sure he actually writes his books too.
Okay, and you know, I'm.
But they always say you can't get rich in politics unless you're a crook. End of story. And it's no different from the Dems or the Republicans or whatever. If you've done nothing your entire life except be a politician, you're rich, you're a freaking crook. It's just like they point to Putin. The guy's worth $1 billion. He's never done anything except be a public servant, quote unquote, his entire life.
He's worth far more than $1 billion. He's on track to be the richest.
He's the richest guy in the world. Yeah, I've heard of that. I've heard of that. So, but still, it's just like, of course they're padding their own pockets. It's what people in authority positions do best. And it's just disappointing.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because with Putin being on track to have more wealth than anybody else in the world, he must look at self-made billionaire Donald Trump and think Trump is chump change for him.
Oh, on a personal level, absolutely. Yeah. I would assume that he does just laugh at it because he's been able to manipulate the country so effectively for his gain.
You've coming out with more comments against this new stated policy by Attorney General Sessions. You've even got people like U.S. Senator Mike Lee, who's a very conservative Republican out of Utah, saying to be tough on crime, we have to be smart on crime. And that's why criminal justice reform is a conservative issue. And I'm thrilled to hear that, because for years
I wish that was true.
Liberals that have been pushing that agenda. I don't care who gets credit for it as long as it gets done.
Same here.
That's really the important part. And I mean, there's so much. Senator Kamala Harris saying he wants to turn back the clock on the progress we've made on sentencing reform. Congressman Beto O'Rourke, who is going to now to be challenging Ted Cruz for his Senate seat in Texas next year. Trump and Sessions, he said, let's double down on the failed strategy and add to the highest incarceration rate in the world, America. Instead, let's end the war on drugs.
That's the worst. That's the worst one. The highest incarceration rate in the world. Like, you can't get around that fact.
5% of the world's population, 25% of the world's incarcerated population. And
are we really that criminalistic of a society?
No, I don't think we are 5 times more evil than the rest of the world. But we have too many laws, perhaps, because your average American citizen violates 2 or 3 federal felonies on a daily basis.
Well, we keep hearing about how, the communists are bad and this, that, and the other, and the oppressive regimes of the South, such, and the other. They don't have 5% of their population in prison.
I mean, when you look at incarceration, we're right up there with North Korea, Iran, and China. So we're really
supposedly the people who we are ideologically opposed to. No. Supposedly.
Crazy stuff. So, man, there's just a lot of stuff happening both here in Nevada and on a national level, and we just need to keep track of this and don't forget to call up your representatives. For what good it will do, you can still try to reach the White House, 202-456-1414, and give them your opinion. But I'd say you probably get a little more help out of calling your local congressman or senator. Hey, we're going to take another quick break, and we'll be right back.
Frank's European Service is an authorized Bosch car service center. We service all European makes and models, but specialize in Mercedes-Benz. Why choose Frank's European Service? Our mission is your experience. Honesty, always telling the truth during the service and repair process. Integrity, always doing the right thing. And quality, always using the best possible equipment, parts, fluids, and personnel. We provide a 3-year or 36,000-mile warranty on all parts and repairs. We offer stress-free financing with the Bosch Service Credit Card. Frank's European Service. Visit us at 1931 North Rainbow Boulevard, Las Vegas, or call us now at 702-850-7558.
That, and we'll go from
We're back.
And we're back with more news here. Okay, let's move down to Louisiana, where their Chief Justice blasted a ridiculous 18-year sentence for marijuana. And this is Baton Rouge, the capital of Louisiana. And this comes to us via the Associated Press. And is 18 years, the article starts, in prison without the possibility of parole too harsh for a man arrested with 18 grams of marijuana?
Holy cow.
Yes. Anybody say no here? No, it's pretty unanimous out there.
Huh, a 1 year per gram, huh? Is that a coincidence? That's horrible.
It is. The Louisiana Supreme Court's Chief Justice thinks it's too much, and she blasted her colleagues for upholding the punishment. In a withering dissent on Wednesday, Chief Justice Burnett Johnson called it outrageous and ridiculous that the state's highest court affirmed the lengthy prison sentence for such a small amount of marijuana, enough for at least 18 marijuana cigarettes. Now, it's interesting here, even in this article by the Associated Press, 18 grams, enough for at least 18 marijuana cigarettes. Wow, that sounds like a lot there. Less than a pack of cigarettes, but boy, at least 18 marijuana cigarettes. Roll pin joints like Richard Gammick did when he was DA upstate there, and he'd get 300 joints out of the mouth, right? But
perception, I guess,
Killer
right?
Mike, you'd be lucky to get 3 joints out of it. So anyway, a jury convicted Gary Howard on marijuana possession with the intent to distribute, and a Caddo Parish judge sentenced him as a habitual offender back in 2014. His previous convictions include possession of a firearm by a convicted felon in 2008. Okay, he's gotten into some trouble, yes, and
was the original felony for marijuana? Was it for robbing a guy? There are all these
the article yet.
All these questions, so many questions.
And the Supreme Court Chief Justice Johnson questioned whether it was a mere coincidence or an arbitrary decision that his sentence amounts to 1 year per gram of marijuana.
So even the judge caught that
during the search of his girlfriend's home in 2013. As a practical matter, she wrote, in light of the inconsequential amount of marijuana found, imprisoning defendant for this extreme length of time at a cost of about $23,000 per year, costing our state, the state of Louisiana, over $400,000 in total, provides little societal value and only serves to further burden our financially strapped state and its taxpayers. This is absolutely insane. 18 years for 18 grams. And, okay, fine. He's gotten into trouble before. If you're going to...
Is this one of those mandatory minimum things, or was this just like...
No.
The way that the judge decided to roll this?
Yeah, this is the way that the judge decided to roll it.
Do they have for-profit prisons in Louisiana?
Oh, yeah. Sure.
I would assume so. I don't know that for a fact, but I would guess, sure.
They definitely do.
There you go.
And the interesting thing here, and besides 18 years being ridiculous, and I pulled the story, the other interesting note I saw is towards the end where it says the state Supreme Court's majority ruled that there was sufficient evidence that Howard packaged the marijuana for distribution. Police found the drugs in 5 baggies when they arrested Howard. Johnson, the Chief Supreme Court Justice, however, said that a prosecution expert conceded that the marijuana could have been for Howard's personal use. The expert also acknowledged that it was possible that the marijuana was purchased in the same form that police found it. In other words, he bought 5 bags of marijuana. He didn't buy it and then repackage it.
If someone went into
it.
my house right now, I go to different dispensaries depending on which text messages and deals are available to me. And I don't necessarily want to dump them all into the same same bag because you got Blue Dream over here, you got OG over here, and you got this stuff. And it sounds kind of weird, but I like to keep that separate because it, the flavors are different, the effects are different, and just like how you wouldn't buy vodka or Jack or even if you liked whiskey, you have bourbon, you have Jack Daniels, you have Crown Royal. You're not going to take those three and dump them into the same thing just because you're afraid someone's going to be you're going to be accused of distributing these different bottles of liquor you've acquired over the different things. Right. I mean, I'm not putting that in this guy's court. You know what I mean?
Slowly, absolute, and
no, of course not. It'll ruin it. No, of course not. It'll ruin it. But I'm not saying that's what happened here. But I'm saying that's what could have happened here. I know there's no dispensaries in Louisiana, so on and so forth. But still, like if it was 18,
bought a few bags of he bought 18. So it sounds like he bought
5/8, or he had it packaged into 5/8. Either way, you know what I mean? It's just like even if the guy was selling and he only had a half ounce, 18 years, what the fuck?
It's just
let's just theorize. Let's just theorize. It was 18 grams, 18 bags, and he had a. They didn't say they found a scale. They didn't say they found any evidence like a ledger with drug debt on it or like a notepad or anything like that, which so many dumbass dealers keep.
Meanwhile, the average sentence for an auto theft is 62 months, and the average theft for an armed robbery is 69 months.
The guy who assaulted my grandfather, my 90-year-old World War II veteran grandfather, violently broke his hip, stole his wallet, armed robbery. He got 2 to 6.
2 to 6.
2 years, and he had just been released from prison less than a year before for assault and battery on an elderly person, which were supposed to carry all these enhancements because it's an elderly person and habitual offender. But oh no, they cut a deal right away and let him out in 2 years, and this guy gets 18 years minimum for possession of marijuana.
Yeah, without the possibility of parole.
Ridiculous.
And the thing, in a 2 to 6 sentence, you do have the possibility of parole.
We're hoping he gets 6, but still, even if it's 6, it's not long enough.
Even with 2, here in the state of Nevada, state inmates typically do between 35 and 40% of their time.
Well, so sure, overcrowding, good behavior, etc.
Exactly. So you could see this guy who's just been sentenced for 2 to 6 back out on the street in 8 to 10 months doing this to somebody else. And meanwhile, you got this guy who ran into a little trouble before. Granted, years ago, and he's got a little weed, and they put him in jail.
The punishment should fit the crime. Look, the guy had too much weed. You give him a fat fine, and maybe he does some community service or something. And you tell him, bro, you don't have these packages like this anymore.
Well, part of the problem is that he was sentenced under this case where he was sentenced for the crime of possession with intent to distribute. But according to the Chief Supreme Court Justice Johnson here, she says that legally the state proved nothing more than simple possession of marijuana in this case. She speculated the authorities overreacted because police found a firearm in a bedroom closet during Howard's arrest, and he was subsequently acquitted of that weapons charge. But
acquitted, or did he take a plea deal?
Right, and so the thing
I mean, it said acquitted, but
it said acquitted, right? And so the thing is that this is why so many people want cannabis reform. Because not that we want everybody to go out there.
You ever heard that saying? The most dangerous thing about marijuana is getting caught with it.
Jack Harris.
I mean, these cops are like, well, we're going to protect your life by keeping marijuana off the streets. It's like, you're hurting more people than you're helping.
Protect your life by putting you in jail.
Yeah,
you can't get into trouble
look
by
what
smoking
now that you're in a prison cell, look, we saved him. Yeah. We saved him from himself.
Oh my God, I got to get away from this. Here, let's talk about something else.
Okay, so before we sign off, we got this story about our favorite mixed martial arts fighter named Nate Diaz, actually. He is a prominent mixed martial arts fighter in the UFC. His brother Nick, they're both advocates for marijuana. Yes. And long story longer, they've been really getting the crap end of the stick because of their marijuana use. They've been denied fights, they've been fined, they've been suspended, etc. And Nate Diaz basically said after his most recent suspension for cannabis use that the marijuana industry was just rushing to endorse him, throw him money for various functions, endorsements, etc. So he's been making a ton of money outside of fighting through the marijuana industry.
Had a fight since last August.
They won't let him fight.
They won't let him fight, and he doesn't care because he's doing all these endorsement deals for pot companies.
And he's still, it's like he says, he's like, as soon as they let me back in, he's ready to roll. He's training harder than ever, and he's still ready to fight. Don't think he's gone soft. So let's hope that those Diaz brothers get what's due to them.
Yeah, and this was a case where this came about because he was caught vaping in a post-fight conference.
Oh yeah, that's right. It was the CBD thing. So what made that story
CBD.
even more ridiculous? Well, there were some weird rules about how, like, you're not allowed to use these certain drugs within 6 hours afterwards because the drug test policies. But now after that came down, they changed all that, and now it's only 1 hour after they drug test you immediately, and you're basically free to do what you want right as soon as the post-fight press conference occurs, which is nice to see them getting flexible. The United States Athletic Doping Association kind of has their crap kind of, I don't want to say it together, but they're at least looking at it.
They're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, they're trying.
Moving in the right direction.
But
in the same vein, but a different association. I also have an article here that says a NASCAR driver, Carl Long, was forced to remove a marijuana business logo from his car, and the logo was for Wiedwerks. Wiedwerks sounds like a good German company, but they're based in Colorado, and they're a medical marijuana dispensary, and they were on the hood of his car, and NASCAR said, no, you can't do that.
Well, do you remember back in the day when it used to be the Winston Cup?
Sure.
And that went on for decades. It was the Winston Cup, and now I think it was the Sprint Cup, and now I think it's like something ridiculous like the Monster Energy Cup, which is, by the way, proven more dangerous than cannabis, but that's neither here nor there. They have, alcohol endorsements up the yin yang and things like that. NASCAR doesn't have any problem with that, but NASCAR is a family-owned company. They're a Christian family.
Yeah.
They are going to have what they want, and that's about it. So that's just another bridge we can hope to build with these people over the course of the years. And it's nice for me to see that marijuana companies are becoming big enough and are aggressive enough in their marketing tactics to want to address NASCAR, to want to be like Shango and sponsor that drift car. They're pursuing new avenues of reaching these different markets that they're not familiar with, or that they're
trying to be a normalized industry, just like any other industry that we have in America.
They're trying. Yeah. They're trying hard. I'm looking forward to the day to where we see commercials and things like that, and really have this industry blossom. But with that, I guess we're out of time, unfortunately.
We've got a couple more minutes here. Then I just came across this story, and so I haven't even read it yet, but boy, it just freaking annoys me. Out of the LA Times, it says, former Northern California narcotics deputy convicted of smuggling marijuana. Oh my
well,
God.
Now I have I have a question about that without even.
Okay.
Will he have his service to the community considered in sentencing?
Absolutely.
Or should they throw the book at him more because of his authority within that industry?
And the hypocritic nature.
Those that have been bestowed authority over us should be held to a higher standard, not a lower standard. And it seems like it's just the other way around. A long time ago, Scruff McGruff, the crime dog, the guy who played that guy, was convicted for growing marijuana in Chicago and did years in jail. It seems like the temptation is irresistible to some of these people that are so close to it. What is that old Bible saying? We covet what we seek every day.
Yeah. Well, I think it's not only. I think it's not only the temptation of it, but I think a lot of people say this is really no big thing. I can't believe that anybody would screw up my life forever because of this. It's this plant. But we've seen that happen way too many times. So this narcotics investigator was from Yuba County in California, and he was convicted for smuggling 220 pounds of marijuana
that's a lot.
as part of a cross-country drug ring, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. So
that's not sending your buddy an ounce through the mail.
How
many grams is that?
454 to the ounce times 220 pounds. So
454 years. That's funny.
900 for 2 pounds. So you're talking about about 90,000 grams.
So that's 90,000 years in jail, according to Louisiana law, right?
There you go.
That's funny.
Right? So and even though he was from California, he received his guilty verdict in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And it was a 2-day drug trafficking and money laundering trial of Christopher Christopher Mark Heath, who was working for the sheriff's office when he was arrested in 2015, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Oh, he has since resigned. Well, how about that? Federal authorities accused Heath and his co-conspirators of a scheme that allowed hundreds of pounds of marijuana to be shipped from California to Florida and Pennsylvania. They started growing marijuana in Oroville in September 2014. They worked with a connection at the U.S. Postal Service in Oroville and sent it to post office boxes that had been rented, as well as to a home in Pennsylvania. What else happens here? Federal officials believe that about $500,000 in drug proceeds was shipped to Oroville and continued for more than a year until Heath and his co-conspirators finally got caught in December 2015. And he was carrying a loaded Glock pistol and his sheriff's deputy bag and 165 packages of cannabis in his Ford F-50 truck. When they arrived in Pennsylvania to deliver the packages, federal authorities said they were met by members of a drug enforcement task force and were arrested. And he's facing additional firearms charges in Butte County and faces at least 40 years in prison for his drug conviction.
Jesus.
Not 90,000 years, just 40 years.
That's enough.
That's plenty enough. So, hey, you out there listening, stay safe. Don't do anything crazy. You know, we're
get
in
your licenses.
Mode. Do what you need to do, but by all means, stay safe, and we will see you next time.